The agonized shrieks of that little boy still haunt my dreams every night, but not as much they haunt the charred corpses on 1,000 scorched Galactic Council worlds. Karos shifted in his chair, the dim starlight casting sharp shadows across his weathered green face. He looked at his old friend Dren and sighed. Remember when the Council tortured that human child, Roy Carter, 50 years ago? Dren nodded grimly. I'll never forget it. The whole galaxy was in an uproar. I was there, you know, Karos said, in the council chambers. They brought the boy before the councillors. He was so small, Dren, just 8 Earth years. They demanded he tell them Earth's defense secrets, but he wouldn't talk. Beat him, burned him, subjected him to unimaginable pain, but he never broke. Karos's fists clenched. I saw the look in his eyes, defiant, strong. They couldn't break his spirit no matter what they did. And then the humans found out, Dren whispered. Dren shook his head. I've never seen such fury. They weren't going to stop until the council was in ruins. Can you blame them? If someone tortured your child, wouldn't you want revenge? The humans are terrifying when provoked, Dren said. Karos nodded, a faraway look in his eyes. Humanity's vengeance was swift and merciless. The Council's torture of Roy Carter was the greatest mistake they ever made, and the last mistake they ever made. Dren stares at Karos, his mind reeling from the tale of humanity's wrath. They demanded the child back just like that? Karos nods solemnly. They did. The humans broadcast a message across every frequency in every language. They made their ultimatum clear. Return Roy Carter unharmed within 1 Earth day or suffer the consequences. And the Council? They didn't comply, did they? Dren asks, though he already knows the answer. Karos shakes his head. No, they were too proud, too arrogant. They thought they could call humanity's bluff. He looks down at his hands. They were wrong. Dren leans in closer. So the humans attacked? Yes, Karos says, his voice low. They sent a fleet, but it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships were sleek, fast, and armed with weapons that made our best look like children's toys. Dren's eyes widen. They targeted the Council's homeworlds? Karos nods. They went straight for the heart. The Council's defenses, the ones they boasted were impenetrable. The human ships sliced through them like they weren't even there. By the stars, Dren whispers. What happened then? Karos's gaze turns distant, haunted. They burned them, Dren. The human fleet rained hellfire down on the Council's worlds. Cities reduced to rubble and ash. Billions fleeing in terror as their homes crumbled around them. I saw it, Karos says, his voice trembling, from the bridge of my ship. I watched the Council's mighty empire fall in a matter of days. And the humans? They never faltered, never showed mercy. They were relentless. Dren sits back, trying to process the scale of such destruction. To bring the Council to its knees like that, the power the humans must wield. Karos meets his friend's gaze, a grim smile on his lips. The Council thought they were untouchable. They believed they could do as they pleased, without consequence. But they crossed the wrong species. They crossed the humans. And now, the whole galaxy knows what it means to earn humanity's fury. Karos nods, his expression solemn. Yes, it does. The humans showed us a side of themselves that day that we had never seen before. A fierce, unyielding determination to protect their own, no matter the cost. Dren leans back, his mind still processing the incredible tale. I can't imagine the courage it must have taken for those soldiers to infiltrate the Council's headquarters like that. To face down an entire army just to save one child. Dren shakes his head in wonder. And the child Roy, and to endure such torture, and still have the strength to smile at his rescuers, it's almost unbelievable. Karos nods. It's a testament to the human spirit, their resilience, their refusal to be broken. Even in the darkest of moments, they find a way to keep going, to keep fighting. Dren is quiet for a moment, contemplating. You know, I used to think the humans were weak. I thought their compassion, their unwillingness to fight made them vulnerable, but now I see that it's their greatest strength. Karos hums in agreement. You're right. It's not weakness that drives them to protect each other, to stand up for what they believe in. It's love, and that, my friend, is more powerful than any weapon in the galaxy. Dren nods, a newfound respect for humanity etched on his features. I see that now. The Council, in their arrogance, thought they could break the humans, but they underestimated the strength of their bonds, the depth of their loyalty to one another. Karos leans forward, his gaze intense. And that was their downfall. They pushed the humans too far, and they paid the ultimate price. The galaxy will never forget the lesson learned that day, that you do not mess with humanity's children. Dren sits back, stunned by the implications of Karos's words. So the humans became the de facto rulers of the galaxy, just like that? Dren shakes his head in disbelief. I can't imagine what that must have been like for the other races, to have their entire way of life upended in an instant, to be at the mercy of a species they once considered inferior. Karos sighs, his eyes distant. It was a difficult time for many. The humans were not cruel rulers, but they were firm. They made it clear that any attempts at rebellion or insurrection would be met with swift and decisive action. Dren leans forward, his curiosity piqued. But surely there were some who resisted, who refused to bend the knee to human rule. Karos nods, a hint of admiration in his voice. There were a few, yes. The Zorgons in particular were vocal in their opposition. They saw the humans as a threat to their own power and influence, and they tried to rally the other races against them. Dren's eyes widen. What did they do? Karos takes a sip of his drink, his expression thoughtful. They tried to form a coalition, a united front against human expansion. They even went so far as to launch a preemptive strike against a human colony, hoping to catch them off guard and send a message. Dren gasps. They attacked a human settlement. That's suicide. Karos nods, a grim smile on his face. It was a foolish move, born of desperation and fear. The humans responded with a fury that made their attack on the Council look like child's play. They sent a fleet of ships to the Zorgon homeworld and bombarded it from orbit, reducing it to a smoldering ruin. Dren shakes his head, horrified. By the stars, the destruction must have been unimaginable. Karos's expression hardens, his voice low and serious. It was a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. Anyone who dared to challenge human supremacy would face the same fate as the Council and the Zorgons. The other races had no choice but to fall in line, to accept human rule or risk annihilation. Dren sits back, his mind reeling from the implications of Karos's words. The galaxy had indeed changed, and the humans were now the undisputed masters of it all. He couldn't help but wonder what the future held, what other challenges and conflicts might arise in the face of such a seismic shift in power. Karos seems to sense his friend's unease, and he leans forward, his voice softening. It's a lot to take in, I know. But the humans, for all their strength and fury, are not tyrants. They seek peace and stability just as we do, and with their protection the galaxy has a chance to heal, to rebuild from the ashes of the Council's fall. Dren leans back in his chair, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and unease. He looks at Karos, his voice hushed. I had no idea the humans were capable of such ruthlessness, such brutality. It's hard to believe that a race that values its children so highly could also be so merciless. Karos nods, his expression thoughtful. He meets Dren's gaze, a hint of understanding in his eyes. That's the thing about humans, Dren. They are a paradox, a contradiction. They are capable of great compassion and great cruelty, often at the same time. Karos leans back in his chair, his eyes fixed on a point in the distance as if recalling a memory. His voice takes on a reflective tone. I remember a conversation I had with a human diplomat not long after the fall of the Council. He told me that humans have a saying, "Beware the fury of a patient man." Dren frowns, his brow furrowed in confusion. The unfamiliar phrase hangs in the air between them. What does that mean? Karos smiles, a hint of admiration in his voice. He leans forward, his elbows resting on the table. He explained that humans are slow to anger, slow to resort to violence. They will tolerate a great deal of provocation, a great deal of injustice, before they finally snap. But when they do... Karos trails off, his expression darkening. A shadow seems to pass over his face, as if the weight of his words is a physical presence. When they do, their fury is like a supernova, a force of nature that consumes everything in its path. The Council learned that lesson the hard way, and so did the Zorgans. Dren nods slowly, a new understanding dawning in his mind. He speaks softly, as if to himself. So the humans are not a violent race, not inherently. But when they are pushed too far, when their children are threatened... Karos finishes the thought, his voice grim and resolute. They will burn the galaxy to ashes to protect what they hold dear, and may the gods have mercy on anyone who stands in their way. Dren shakes his head, marveling at the complexity of the human race. He looks at Karos, a newfound respect in his eyes. I never truly understood the depths of their devotion, the lengths they would go to defend their own. It's both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Dren averts his gaze, his heart heavy with the weight of Karos's words. The silence stretches between them, thick with the ghosts of a shattered peace. After a long moment, Dren speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea. The Eldari, they were always spoken of with such reverence. To think that they could be wiped out so easily, so senselessly. Karos nods, his eyes distant. It was a dark day for the galaxy, Dren. A day that will live in infamy. The humans, they let their anger consume them, blind them to the possibility of a better way. And in doing so, they destroyed any chance of a lasting peace. Dren shakes his head, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the loss. But surely there were some among the humans who saw the folly of their actions, who tried to stop the attack, to find a diplomatic solution. Karos sighs, his shoulders slumping under the weight of memory. If there were, their voices were drowned out by the clamor for vengeance. The humans were a wounded animal, lashing out at any perceived threat. They saw enemies in every shadow, traitors in every extended hand. Dren leans forward, his voice urgent. But the Eldari, they were no threat. They had no weapons, no armies. They posed no danger to the humans. Karos meets his gaze, a deep sadness etched into the lines of his face. You're right, Dren. The Eldari were innocent. They were a beacon of hope in a galaxy consumed by darkness. And the humans, in their rage and their fear, snuffed out that light forever. Dren sits back, his mind reeling. The implications of the humans' actions are staggering, the consequences far-reaching. So, what now? What becomes of the galaxy with the Eldari gone and the humans unopposed? Karos is quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the stars outside the viewport. When he speaks, his voice is heavy with resignation. Now we live in a galaxy, ruled by fear, Dren. A galaxy where the strong prey on the weak, and the only law is the law of the gun. The humans, for all their talk of justice and righteousness, have become the very thing they fought against. Dren's mouth hangs open in shock, his eyes wide as saucers. He stares at Karos, struggling to process the enormity of what he's just heard. A battle between the humans and the Taurians? Two warrior races facing off in a final showdown? It's almost too incredible to believe. Karos nods, his expression a mix of excitement and trepidation. He leans back in his chair, his gaze distant, as if he's picturing the scene in his mind's eye. It was a moment that would define the future of the galaxy, Dren. The outcome of that battle would determine whether the humans would continue their reign of terror unchecked, or whether a new power would rise to challenge them. Dren shakes his head, still reeling from the revelation. But why the Taurians, Karos? What made them think they could succeed where so many others had failed? Karos smiles, a glint of admiration in his eyes. The Taurians were a proud race, Dren. They had a long history of martial prowess, and they believed in the old ways of honor and courage. They saw the humans as kindred spirits, in a way, a race that valued strength and determination above all else. Karos leans forward, his voice low and intense. But the Taurians also saw the humans' weakness, Dren. They saw the arrogance, the hubris that had led them to believe they were invincible, and they believed that they could use that weakness against them. Dren frowns, trying to understand. How so? What did the Taurians have that the humans didn't? Karos's smile widens, his eyes gleaming with a hint of mischief. The Taurians had a secret weapon, Dren, something the humans had never encountered before, something they couldn't possibly have prepared for. Dren's eyes narrow, his curiosity piqued. What was it, Karos? What did the Taurians bring to the fight? Karos chuckles, a sound that's half amusement, half anticipation. He takes another sip of his drink, savoring the moment. The Taurians brought their spirit, Dren, their unbreakable will, their unwavering commitment to victory. They brought the knowledge that they were fighting not just for themselves, but for the fate of the entire galaxy. Karos's voice drops to a whisper, his eyes locked on Dren's. And most importantly, they brought their faith, Dren, their belief in the old gods, the ones who had guided their people for generations. The Taurians believed that their gods would be with them on that battlefield, that they would grant them the strength and the courage to face the humans and emerge victorious. Dren sits back in his chair, his mind racing with the implications of Karos's words. He tries to imagine the scene, 2 armies, 2 races, facing each other across a barren plain, each convinced of their own superiority, each determined to prove themselves the strongest in the galaxy. It must have been a sight to behold, Dren murmurs almost to himself. The humans with their advanced technology and their ruthless tactics against the Taurians, with their ancient ways and their unshakable faith. Karos nods, his expression solemn. It was a battle that would be remembered for generations, Dren, a clash of civilizations, a moment that would determine the course of history. Karos falls silent, lost in thought. Dren waits, his heart pounding, desperate to hear more. He knows that the story is far from over, that there are still twists and turns to come. But for now he sits back and lets the image wash over him. 2 races, 2 armies, preparing to face each other in a battle that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. A battle that would, one way or another, change everything. Dren sits back, stunned by the revelation. He tries to picture the nemesis in his mind, a ship so massive and powerful that it could obliterate entire fleets with ease. I can't even imagine what that must have been like, to witness such destruction firsthand. Karos nods, his eyes haunted by the memory. It was a sight I'll never forget, Dren. The way the nemesis moved, the way its weapons flared. It was like watching a god of war descend upon the battlefield. He takes another sip of his drink, his hand steadier now. The Taurians fought with everything they had, but it was futile. Their ships were torn apart like paper, their warriors vaporized in an instant. It was a slaughter, plain and simple. Dren leans forward, his voice hushed. And the humans, how did they react to such a victory? Karos laughs, a short, bitter sound. They cheered, Dren. They celebrated the death of an entire race as if it were a sporting event. To them, the Taurians were just another obstacle to be removed, another enemy to be crushed beneath their heel. He shakes his head, his expression darkening. But the worst part? The nemesis was just the beginning. The humans had other weapons, other ships that were just as powerful, and they weren't afraid to use them. Dren's eyes widen, a chill running down his spine. Other weapons? You mean there were more ships like the nemesis? Dren swallows hard, his mouth suddenly dry. So what happened next? Did the humans just take over the galaxy unopposed? Karos sighs, his shoulders slumping. Not exactly. There were still a few races that resisted, a few that tried to stand up to the human juggernaut. But it was a losing battle from the start. He looks up, his eyes meeting Dren's. The humans had become the very thing they once fought against, Dren. They were the new council, the new oppressors, and they would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on power. Dren shakes his head, trying to wrap his mind around the enormity of it all. I never thought I'd see the day when the humans became the villains of the story. It's like everything we thought we knew about them was a lie. Karos nods, a sad smile on his face. The truth is rarely simple, Dren. The humans are capable of great good and great evil, just like any other race. The only difference is the scale on which they operate. He drains the last of his drink, setting the empty glass on the table. The Nemesis changed everything, Dren. It showed the galaxy what the humans were truly capable of, and it shattered any illusions of peace or coexistence. From that day forward, the galaxy belonged to the humans, and the rest of us were just living in it. Dren leans back in his chair, his mouth agape with shock. He stares at Karos, trying to process the incredible tale he's just heard. Wait, so you're telling me that the Taurians, the most feared warriors in the galaxy, actually surrendered to the humans? That they offered to serve them after everything that had happened? Karos nods, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I know, it's hard to believe, but that's exactly what happened. Zara stood there on the bridge of the Nemesis, and she looked the human commander right in the eye. She said that the Taurians had never encountered a race as powerful, as fearless as the humans, and that if the humans would have them, the Taurians would fight by their side, loyal to the end. Dren shakes his head in disbelief. And the humans, what did they say? Karos leans forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The commander, a grizzled old warrior named Admiral Brock, he just stared at Zara for a long moment. You could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to decide if this was some kind of trick. Karos pauses for effect, letting the tension build. But then he did something that no one expected. He stepped forward and he extended his hand to Zara, a gesture of respect, of acceptance. And he said, "The Taurians have proven themselves worthy opponents. It would be an honor to fight alongside you." Dren's eyes widen, his heart racing with excitement. So that was it? The Taurians joined forces with the humans just like that? Karos nods, a look of satisfaction on his face. That was it. From that moment on, the Taurians were a part of the human fleet. They fought together, side by side, against any who dared to oppose them. The Nemesis became a symbol of their alliance, a testament to the unbreakable bond between the two races. Dren sits back in his chair, his mind reeling with the implications of Karos's story. That's incredible, Karos. I never would have believed it if I hadn't heard it from you. The humans and the Taurians working together, it's like something out of a legend. Karos smiles, a faraway look in his eyes. It was a turning point, Dren. The moment when the galaxy realized that the old ways were gone, that a new order had emerged. The humans and the Taurians, they were the future. And nothing would ever be the same again. Dren's face twists with revulsion. He shakes his head slowly, struggling to comprehend the depths of human cruelty. They took children, Karos, innocent children, to be molded into weapons of war. What kind of monsters would do such a thing? Karos sighs heavily, his shoulders slumping under the weight of memory. He looks down at his hands as if seeing the blood of generations staining his fingers. The kind of monsters that conquer galaxies, Dren. The kind that see everything and everyone as a means to an end, a tool to be used in their grand design. Dren leans back in his chair, his eyes wide with horror. And the Taurians went along with this? They sacrificed their own children, their future, for the promise of survival. Karos nods grimly. They did. Zara handed over her son, Karim, with her own hands. I can still see the look in her eyes, Dren. The pain, the despair, the knowledge that she was condemning her child to a fate worse than death. Dren shudders, his stomach churning at the thought. What happened to them, Karos? The Taurian children, what did the humans do to them? Karos closes his eyes, as if trying to block out the memories. His voice is barely a whisper. They broke them, Dren. They took those innocent souls, and they twisted them, warped them into something unrecognizable. They used them as test subjects, as guinea pigs, for their sick experiments. Dren's heart clenches in his chest. He can almost hear the screams of the children echoing through the void of space. Experiments? What kind of experiments? Karos opens his eyes, and the pain in them is almost unbearable. The worst kind, Dren. They pumped them full of chemicals, spliced their genes with those of monsters from the darkest corners of the universe. They turned them into living weapons, creatures of pure rage and hatred. Dren's voice is hoarse, barely above a whisper. And then what? What did they do with these abominations they created? Karos's laugh is bitter, devoid of humor. They unleashed them, Dren. They set them loose on the galaxy to wreak havoc and destruction wherever they went. The Taurian children became the humans' attack dogs, their shock troops in the never-ending war for dominance. Dren's mind reels, trying to process the sheer scale of the atrocity. How could they do this, Karos? How could the humans justify such evil? Karos meets Dren's gaze, and the sorrow in his eyes is unfathomable. They justified it with victory, Dren. With the belief that the ends always justify the means, no matter how horrific. They sacrificed their own humanity on the altar of conquest. And in doing so, they damned us all. Dren sits in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of revelation. He looks out at the stars, at the vast expanse of the galaxy, and wonders how many other untold horrors lurk in its depths. Karos drains the last of his drink, setting the glass down with a sense of finality. That is the true legacy of the humans, Dren. Not just the conquest of worlds, but the destruction of innocence itself. They may have won the war, but in the end, they lost their very souls. Dren nods slowly, a grim understanding settling over him. And what of the Taurians, Karos? What became of them after the war? Karos's smile is sad, tinged with a deep and abiding regret. They survived, Dren. They endured, as they always have. But the price they paid, it was too high. They lost a generation of their children, their future, to the humans' madness, and that is a wound that will never truly heal. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.